My girlfriend's son charged at me until I fell over on my stomach and jumped up and down on my back screaming, "Are you my new daddy?" I took a deep breath, and when his mom mouthed, "Sorry," I plastered on a fake smile and mouthed back, "It's all good." Because even though I knew she had a son, I didn't know he was crazy, and part of me didn't want this anymore. How was I supposed to tell her that? When it was time to sit down and eat the homemade lasagna I'd made, Ben twisted a loose bloody tooth out of his mouth and shoved it in my face. "This is for you. You can use it to get money from the tooth fairy." Turned to my girlfriend and asked if she wanted to go on vacation, just the two of us, because I signed up for a girlfriend, not a kid who used my leg as a jungle gym. But she smiled ear to ear. My son would love that. And a few weeks later, when we were at the hotel, Ben was starfished across my chest, painfully plucking the individual hairs on my arm. His mom kissed his head and grabbed her purse. "You guys are so cute. I'm leaving to get ice. Enjoy your bonding time." I yanked myself out of bed and reached my hand out. Wait, but the door had already clicked shut behind her. I quickly grabbed his backpack and took out the drawing that was sticking out. "What's this, buddy?" I knew if I didn't make conversation with him, then he'd find a way to attack me again. He whispered, "Open it." I unfolded it, and at the top read the words, "Draw your family." And below, there were 3 stick figures. The one labeled Dad had 2 different colored eyes, and I knew it was supposed to be me, except he'd drawn it off to the side. I didn't want to draw us all together yet, in case you didn't actually become my new daddy. I read the drawing twice, and my heart broke. The whole time, Ben was just a child who wanted a family. I took out a green crayon and drew a circle around the 3 stick figures. "Look, we're all together." Ben saw what I'd done and charged at me until I fell over on the bed. But this time, I reached my arms out and hugged him back. I'd spent weeks trying to get him off me, but I wasn't putting him down now. My girlfriend's son charged at me and the new Japanese kid tossed his apple in the air, drew a samurai sword from his backpack, and split it into 6 pieces before it hit the tray. Our whole table covered their mouths with their hands in shock. The kid caught a slice on the blade, ate it, and shrugged like he'd peeled a banana. I tapped him. "Dude, how did you do that?" He wiped the steel on his sleeve. "My family used to be samurais. My dad taught me a few tricks." I whispered, "Dude, you gotta hide it from the teachers, or the principal will have you expelled." He shrugged like he didn't care, and when someone threw a grape across the table, he split it mid-air without blinking an eye. People kept going, and someone threw a sandwich, which he cut into perfect triangle slices. A potato, he slices into fries. And just as someone was about to throw a birthday cake at him, the doors banged open, and Principal Collado shoved through the crowd, ripped the sword out of his hands, and held it over his head. "Arts and crafts stay in the art room." The kid rose out of his seat and shook his head. "Sir, this is not arts and crafts. This is a lifelong family custom." Collado laughed in his face. "Okay, karate boy, I've done sword fighting since before you were born." He pointed at the kid's chest. "Beat me in a one-on-one fight, and you keep your little tricks. Lose, which you will, and I will never hear about this again." The kid just nodded. They walked to the yard, and the entire school followed them outside. The kid unrolled a cloth from his bag and stood up with 2 wooden practice swords. He tossed one to Collado and kept the other. Collado came in swinging, wild looping cuts. "Come on, dance for me, karate boy." The kid snapped his sword up, blocked it clean, and didn't swing back. Collado swung harder and harder, but the kid kept dodging it. He barked, "Stay still!" and he reared back to bring his sword down overhead with both hands. The kid stepped in, caught the chop on his blade overhead, and cracked his own sword across Collado's wrists. The wooden sword dropped into the grass. The kid swept Collado's legs out and dropped him flat on his back, then set his blade against his collar. The yard went dead silent. The kid lifted it away and pulled Collado up by the hand. "That one was a trick my dad taught me." He pulled his sword from the dirt, slid it into his bag, and shrugged like none of it mattered. "And by the way, it's not Karate Boy, it's Samurai King." 400 kids lost their minds. The new Japanese kid tossed his apple in the air, drew a samurai sword from Every parent stood up and walked out in the middle of my daughter's performance to protest against her. I had bought her a new ukulele for the recital because she got an A on her music, and she practiced for it all week. But when we walked into it, none of the parents said hi to me. And when my daughter walked on stage with her ukulele, every parent instantly stood up. One of them yelled, "Cheater," and they all walked out at once, refusing to watch my daughter's recital. I looked around shocked, and my daughter started tearing up and walked off the stage with her new ukulele still in her hand. The next kid came out, and instantly, all the parents returned to the seats and watched his performance like nothing happened. I realized this was deliberate humiliation of my daughter. I immediately rushed backstage and found her sobbing in the corner. She cried, and nothing I said made her stop. She had been so excited, and this completely crushed her. But then the recital ended, and all the parents came to collect their kids. One of them saw my daughter crying and smirked, then loudly said, "That's what she gets." That's when I had enough, and demanded they tell me what happened. One of the mothers grinned and said, "We know your daughter cheated on that music test. All our kids failed, and she somehow got an A. We boycotted her performance because cheaters deserve punishment. I stood there shocked. A bunch of adults traumatized my daughter because she studied for a test. Suddenly I turned around and she was behind me. I realized she'd heard everything. I thought she'd be even sadder, but then she wiped her tears and told the parents, "You did that because I did well on the test? You don't like me because I'm awesome?" Before anyone could respond, she picked up her ukulele and strummed random chords, singing, "I got an A, and you can't take that away." Her tears were gone, and the parents stood frozen. They tried to avoid seeing her perform, and were now forced to watch her perform a mockery of them. My daughter later asked why they didn't like her for being awesome, and I pointed to her A and told her people will only try to tear you down if they're unhappy with themselves. Every parent stood up and walked. I was frat flicking at my first frat party when suddenly the front door got kicked open and cops started flooding in the house. The music cut out and everyone froze. An officer looked around at the destroyed house and screamed, "This is an illegal party with serious property damage. Who is responsible for this?" I was just the new guy trying to get into the frat, so I didn't know what to do. That's when the frat leader James whispered, "Take the blame for this and you're in the frat. Guaranteed." I shook my head no, and his face hardened. He spun around and pointed at me. "Officer, it was him. He threw this whole party." My heart dropped. The cops grabbed me with disgust and dragged me toward the door while the entire party watched. Outside, the entire frat backed up James's lie. "Yeah, it was him. He hosted this party." James pointed at me, smirking. "Officer, I tried to stop him, I swear, but he refused." I felt my face go red with anger. It was my word against the whole frat, and the cops believed every word. Before I could even speak, they slapped handcuffs on my wrists. "We're contacting your school. You'll be expelled and charged for all the damages tonight." "Party's over, buddy." My stomach dropped. I was losing everything for a party I didn't even throw. Desperate, I blurted out, "It's not true. They're lying. Call the homeowners. This house has to have cameras. Please." But the second I said it, James's face went pale. "Well, wait. You don't need to call them. Don't call them." He stammered like he was hiding something. But an officer was already on the phone. Another officer said, "Too late, buddy. They'll be on their way soon." Moments later, a car pulled up and an older couple stepped out. The second James saw them, he started shaking. He scrambled, pointing at me. "It was him. He threw the party, I swear." But the woman didn't even look at me. She crossed her arms and stared James down. "James, this is the third time you've trashed our house. We're so tired of paying for your frat party's damages. You're a terrible son." My jaw dropped. These were his parents and his house. His dad turned to the officer. "Arrest him. It's time he finally pays for what he does." The cops uncuffed me and slapped them right on James. As they dragged him to the car, I said, "After party at my house?" I was frat flicking at my first frat party when suddenly the front door got My wife walked into our kitchen and found me leading 4 grown men in worship around her air fryer. I'd been the family cook for 15 years. My oven was sacred. So when she brought home that 6-quart air fryer last Monday, I called it a glorified hairdryer and told her I'd never touch it. Friday night, she went to her sister's. I had frozen wings, an empty stomach, and an oven that took 35 minutes to preheat. I caved. 8 minutes later, I was holding a perfectly crispy wing like I'd just discovered fire. I ate the whole bag. Saturday, I met my drinking buddies at Murphy's and slid a container of leftover wings across the table. Greg laughed. "You dragged us out for cold wings? Those wings took 8 minutes. Mike scoffed. "In what? The microwave? Air fryer." Pete shook his head. "Bro, no. Come to my house tonight." Greg gave me a slow blink. "If you're trying to sell me something, I'm walking right back out." That night, I dimmed the kitchen lights and set the air fryer in the middle of the counter with 3 trays of raw wings beside it. The buddies walked in laughing. 8 minutes later, they weren't. Greg whispered, "Oh my God." Pete sat down on the kitchen floor. Mike pulled out his phone and started filming. That's when she came home. She stood in the doorway with her purse still on her shoulder and stared at 4 grown men hovering around her air fryer like it was holy. I held out a wing. She walked over, took it, and bit down. Her eyes closed. I nodded. "I know." Greg whispered, "Praise be." She turned to me. "I told you." I raised both hands in the air. "You told me." My wife walked into our kitchen and found me leading 4 grown men in worship around her air fryer. I'd been the family cook for 15 years. My oven was sacred. I just completed a number 2 on my crush's toilet, and while keeping my eyes glued to my Roblox match, I flushed and went to stand up. But as I tried to move, my legs wouldn't budge. They were dead. I grabbed the sink to haul myself up, but my legs folded and I hit the tile. Cold water soaked through my socks. I turned, and the bowl was overflowing, water creeping across the floor toward me. My body started pumping with adrenaline because if I couldn't think of a solution, then my chances with my crush would be cooked. I was on the floor, trying to move my legs legs like a bicycle to get the blood flowing when I heard a loud knock on the door from my crush's dad. "You good in there, son?" I scratched my head. Yep, all good. Just need a minute." I threw toilet paper at the water to soak it up, but it turned to mush in my hands. So I ripped my shirt over my head and shoved it across the floor like a mop. The bowl gurgled and burped up brown water all over it, and the smell was so rancid that my eyes instantly started watering. I buried my head in my hands because I was sure I was screwed. The handle started to turn, and my crush's dad announced he was coming in. I lunged for the lock, but my legs still wouldn't hold me up. The door swung open. He stood there staring down at me on the floor, shirtless, sitting in it. He pinched the bridge of his nose but didn't say a word. He rolled up his sleeves, grabbed the plunger off the wall, and got down beside me to fix the toilet. When it finally drained, he pulled a towel off the rack and handed it to me. "You're the first kid my daughter has brought home that I've actually liked, so she doesn't need to know about this." My mouth dropped because I couldn't believe my crush's dad was the chillest guy ever. But when I put my fist out for him to bump it, he nodded at the phone still glowing on the floor. "Just cut down on the Roblox, aight? I just completed a number 2 on my crush's toilet." The day before my birthday, my dad knocked on my door and asked me what I wanted as my present. I thought about how I'd been dreaming of a PS5 for years and told him a PS5. Dad narrowed his eyes and nodded slowly, then slammed my door and went back to playing with my brother. I couldn't sleep that night as I was so excited, but when I tore open my birthday present, my smile dropped. It was a soccer ball instead of a PS5. I asked Dad, "Why isn't it a PlayStation?" But he adjusted his glasses and crossed his arms. "Because I know what's better for you. A stupid console isn't a good present." I looked at the soccer ball and felt like crying because soccer wasn't even my favorite sport.
Hey guys,
I walked back to my room, and that's when my brother came in. He stared at
Let me edit my Twitch stream.
my PS5 poster and my list of games I'd already planned to buy, then sat next to me. That's not fair what he did. I didn't respond, but then he said, "Let me handle it, little brother. I got you." He walked away, and I had no idea what he meant. Months passed, and I still didn't have a PS5, and Dad kept asking why I wasn't playing with my soccer ball. But then Christmas came. I unwrapped my present expecting nothing, and was still disappointed when I saw the soccer cleats. Dad grinned. "Now you have no excuse not to play with that soccer ball." I was crushed and started to leave, but then my brother tapped my shoulder and grinned like he had a plan. He tore open his present while Dad filmed, and my jaw nearly hit the floor. A PS5 stared him in the face. His eyes glowed, and he turned to Dad. "This is exactly what I asked for." Dad wiped a tear and replied, "Anything for my boy." He stopped recording, and I felt my chest aching because how could they do this to me? "But why didn't you get me one?" I asked, almost crying. Dad stared right at me. "You don't need one." I was about to crash out, but then my brother reached out and handed me the PS5. My eyes widened, and Dad immediately shot up. "What are you doing, son? That present is yours." He tried to grab the PS5 from me, but my brother slapped his hand away. "No, it's his. He asked for it, and you got him something he doesn't even like. Then I asked and you got it immediately. I'm sick of being your favorite child." He didn't even wait for a response and turned to me. "Now let's go set it up." He held up a game from my list he'd seen months ago. We walked to my room, my hands shaking on the PS5 box. The day before my birthday, my dad knocked on my door and asked me what I wanted as my best friend walked into class painted in green from head to toe, wearing purple shorts, flexing both arms at the ceiling. I was the first to laugh, and he turned and slammed both fists down on the desk. "Hulk doesn't want to be laughed at. Hulk is angry." The whole class flinched, and I just rolled my eyes because I thought it was some weird prank. But when he came in the next morning, he punched the door frame and screamed, "Hulk has arrived." The entire class started whispering, until he sat down and flung a chair at the wall. I grabbed his shoulders. "Todd, what the hell are you doing? You look insane." He shook me off. "Todd gets picked on. Todd gets shoved into lockers. Hulk doesn't. It's better this way. You'll see." And at lunchtime in the cafeteria, I started to see what he was talking about, because the kid who shoved him every day knocked his tray onto the floor. But this time, Todd spun around and was ready to fight back. He roared into his face and drove his fist through the plastic tray on the table. "Hulk dares you to hurt him again. Do it!" The bully completely froze, and it was the first time I'd ever seen someone be intimidated by Todd. The next day, I found him alone at the lockers, still green, still in purple. "Todd, it's me. You can stop now." He turned his head toward me, and there was nothing behind his eyes. "Todd is not here. Hulk is here to stay." Down the hall, a crowd swarmed him, pointing and laughing, but he was too numb to care anymore. My heart broke because I was the first to laugh at Todd, and now I was the only one who couldn't. My best friend walked into class painted in green from head to toe, wearing purple shorts, I was 3 weeks into my sentence at a Mexican prison when the biggest guy walked up to me with his fists clenched. He pressed a wrapped knife into my chest and said, "I'm Diego, and you'll be hiding this under your bed for tonight's shakedown." I told him no, but he stepped so close I noticed the cartel ink around his neck. "Hide it, or I'm using it on you." I took the wrapped knife with shaking hands and walked back to my bunk, having no idea what to do. But then I saw Diego whispering to one of the guards and realized he had serious influence here. That night, the same guard walked in and immediately reached under my mattress. He pulled the knife out and instantly slammed me into the brick wall so hard I felt my tooth crack. "What's this American?" He held my arms behind my back. I didn't want to snitch, but I owed Diego nothing. So I replied, "Diego made me hide it. He said he'd kill me if I didn't." But the guard clicked handcuffs on me. "I have no idea who that is. Just wait till morning. We'll sort this out." He threw me to the ground, and I spent the rest of the night locked in handcuffs. In the morning, the same guard opened my cell. "Come with me, American." He dragged me to the yard where Diego was already kneeling. He forced me down beside him and said, "There's only one way to settle this." He swung a leather strap hard at my back, and it tore through my shirt. He swung 10 times until my back was raw and red. It hurt to move. Then he got to Diego and gently slapped him 3 times. I was in disbelief, and Diego quickly rose to his feet. "We're fighting to the death," he announced to the crowd that was forming around us. I got up, my back in agony, and I didn't even have time to gather myself before he threw a punch. He hit me, and I stumbled, and he threw another, but I managed to duck, and his momentum carried him into the crowd. But that's when I noticed the same guard, slipping the same knife into Diego's hand. My legs trembled as I realized I was fighting a knife, and suddenly adrenaline took over, and my back was no longer in pain. Diego swung the knife, but I dodged it. He swung again as his cartel buddies yelled, and when it sliced my cheek, I knew I couldn't duck forever. So the next time he swung and missed, I unloaded a right hand. It cracked his jaw, and Diego fell face first, his head bouncing off the dirt. His knife fell from his fingers, and he stopped moving. The crowd went silent as I stood there with blood pouring down my cheek, staring at the guard who gave the knife. He was next. I was 3 weeks into my sentence. I held out my arm to shake my girlfriend's mom's hand for the first time, and she looked my tattoos up and down and gasped. "You look like criminal, like the scary men in our neighborhood." My girlfriend Ike frowned. "Ma, stop. He's an ex-MMA fighter." I politely nodded because I was determined to make a good impression no matter what. Her dad finished locking up the front door with a deadbolt, and then stepped in front of me like I was a wild animal. He pointed a finger at my girlfriend. "Me like last boy better." Aki crossed her arms in frustration. "Let's just sit down and eat." I took the last seat at the table, and that's when I heard gunshots outside. Aki put her hand on mine and whispered, "Don't worry, it's just a sketchy neighborhood. We hear it all the time." He waved a hand at me. "My Ike go to college. You end up in jail or dead. You take her down with you." I opened my mouth to tell him about how I have $1 million in savings from MMA fighting, but stopped when we heard the gun outside again. Suddenly, a bullet shot through the glass. Ike and her family immediately ducked under the table, and her mom was crying. "Why is this happening?" I clenched my fists and walked right up to the window. I got it. A man got ready to rush in, but I was already moving. I caught his wrist and slammed the gun loose against the frame. He tried to swing at my cheekbone with his other hand, but I dodged it, took him to the floor, and choked him out the way 10 years of fighting taught me. Her mom crawled out from under the table, took the hand she wouldn't shake, and held it in both of hers. "You protect our family from scary man. You good husband." Her dad nodded politely, still shaking with fear. "Thank you, son." I held out my arm to shake my girlfriend's mom's hand. I handed my son a ball of garbage on his 9th birthday. I couldn't afford a football, but I spent all night making this for you. He started dribbling it around our poor African village. "I love it, Baba. One day I'll be a famous footballer in the World Cup, and I'm going to be so rich I'll buy you whatever you want." I didn't know what to say because I didn't think that could ever come true. But a week later, a volunteer from a charity truck dropped off food and clothes, and he stopped to watch my son juggle that garbage ball 50 times without a drop. "Where did he learn that?" he asked. I told him he taught himself, and he laughed and yelled, "If he keeps that up, I'll see him at the World Cup." My boy's whole face lit up with a smile. "It's meant to be, Baba. I'm meant to be a football star." The volunteer climbed into the supply truck and came back out with real football shoes and a real football. For the next 2 years, he'd kick the football while every kid in the neighborhood watched and cheered. But everything changed when a football academy was running trials in the city. I sold our goat for 2 bus tickets there. My son lined up beside boys in clean kits, the garbage ball still in his bag, and I was sure they'd send him home. But they kept him. And for 5 years, all I heard from him were postcards. Until one night, my phone lit up in the dark, and he could barely speak. "Baba, I made the national team, and we're going to the World Cup." And 3 weeks later, I sat in a stadium of 80,000 strangers with the cracked badge of our village on my chest. The teams walked out under the lights, and I found my son in the line, the flag on his chest. Before the whistle, he jogged to the sideline and pulled a ball of garbage out of his kit bag. He dropped it onto his foot and juggled it, once, twice, in front of the whole world. The boy who promised to buy me whatever I wanted pressed that ball of garbage to his chest, pointed it up at me, and I came apart in a stadium full of strangers. I handed my son a